Chapter 11, Wasu's Tour. Mia. With Ryoki in the lead, Tenchi headed to the field in the strong sunlight. Normally, except for the harvest season, only 2 people went with Tenchi to the fields, but today there were a lot of people. It gave off the atmosphere of a picnic or a hike. Ryoki was happy, practically floating. Mia. The smell of grass and the smell of soil mixed together. Fuku was also excited and was running around like a dog unleashed from her chain on a walk. At that time, Fuku discovered an interesting game. Well, she thought it was a game. She plunged into withered weeds and got entangled with it. Mia. And then after she was rescued by Sena, the foolish Fuku repeatedly did the same thing again and again and again. Hey, you just took a bath. What are you thinking? Fuku's fur was now filled with sticky grass seeds from head to toe. Fuku-chan seems to be having fun, Tenchi said pleasantly. Well, yes, actually there are natural residential areas like the royal ships have in the Kamadic. When I took her to the sea, she ran into the waves just like this actually. She got thrown by the waves and was buried in the sand. Her tail looked just like a sea urchin. Was she okay? We quickly dug her up, but she was laughing happily. Behind Sena, Fuku thrust into the bushes again and got entangled. So, did she repeat the same thing over and over like now? Even though I knew she couldn't drown, I was worried. Amain seems to think she has a death wish. Sena pulled Fuku out from within the bushes and sighed while brushing off the insects and dirt. Ryoki was also like that when she was small. She would chase the butterflies and hit trees and walls or fall in the river. It was a serious problem. Did you reprimand her? Oh yeah. We had to as often as possible, and we had to keep an eye on her all the time, but little by little she learned not to do it. Ryoki has really calmed down with age. I think that Fuku will be the same way. Ringo was looking pleasantly at the 2 of them as they talked. Huh. Why are you looking at us like that? Tenchi and Sena, who noticed her gaze, asked what was wrong. You 2 look like 2 dads swapping child-raising tips. Tenchi and Sena looked at each other at the same time and they both turned red. Ringo laughed. Well then, shall we start working on the field? Tenchi asked. He climbed a slope and stood at the edge of the field. Around 3 o'clock, Sasami ran to the field with a big basket of snacks. Noik came traveling in the truck along the road with large baskets to collect the harvested carrots. Oh! Sasami came up to the top of the hill and came to a position where she could see the area where she stopped in surprise. It was because there were carrots planted as far as the eye could see and all the ones that were ready had been harvested. Usually, it took the Masaki family about 3 days to complete that task. Wow, Tenchi-ne-chan, this is amazing, Sasami said with a sigh while approaching Tenchi and Sena who were resting beside a carrot mountain. Having everyone here is so handy. Usually this takes me quite a while, Tenchi said with a bit of a wry smile. In the Masaki family, Ryoko, Aika, and Mihoshi never did any of the field work. In contrast, the Yamada family was full of workers and cooks like Noik and Sasami. Oh, this is amazing. Are you already done? Noik asked as she stopped the truck and brought out a big case from the back. She looked around happily. Tenchi, let's clean up the carrots before we have tea. No, with this many, we won't be able to get them all carried to be washed in one trip, so let's do it after tea. Well, I guess you're right. Well then, Kiriko, Karen, please set things up, Noik instructed. Kiriko and Karen spread a blanket under a nice tree and put out a small table full for food. Then Noik and Sasami began to line up desserts in baskets on top. There were so many kinds they could have opened a small shop with it. Oh! Needless to say, everyone was surprised, not just Ryoki and Fuku. This looks amazing, doesn't it? I made these as examples of what we should sell at Sena's shop. They're my prototype desserts, Karen said. Noik, who saw Tenchi's reaction, was very satisfied. Kiriko smiled nicely and presented a basket of wet hand towels. They wiped their hands and waited for Sasami to give them the okay to dig in. Come on, let's eat. This is delicious. Wasu was analyzing Sena's personal data in her laboratory. She was very excited. I see. Everything is going well so far. But Wasu, who was in a good mood, took a look at another window on which some data was displayed. Suddenly, she put on a serious face and sighed a little. She wiped out the window and shook it off before she got up. Well, I guess I should collect data from the others now. Ehehehe. Wasu had on a terrifying smile. She put on a lab coat and went into a long-distance transfer gate. Yaha, how are you? Wasu came out in Eri's office at the academy. At that moment, a time-freezing protective barrier for security went off and the time around Eri's secretary stopped. Wasu, what are you doing here so suddenly? Eri obviously had on an upset face. It was rude to come without an appointment. Eri, I'm here too. Yeah, no, actually I don't need it. That's an odd greeting. What's not needed? Oh, Mikami, I want to take a scan of your personal data, please. Please get ready for me right away. Ignoring Eri, Wasu approached Mikami. It was an order rather than a request. My personal data? Wasu-sama's order confused her. What is it about, if you don't mind me asking? If the other party was Wasu, resistance was futile, but at the very least by knowing she could help her get the information she needed. It's regarding Sena, isn't it? She must want to know your feelings to see if you deserve to be with him. Eri, as only a philosopher would have noticed the general intention of Wasu. Wow, Wasu, is that it? Well, in that case, test me. I'm the best. If you are feeling sexually frustrated, you should take that up with your husband. You don't have to hide from him. Tenchi knows you exist already. Yeah, but Sena would be better. If it's because you're into shotas, then you can always build you and him some younger bodies to use. You're a philosopher after all. But Yosho won't be into that. Well, I'm sure he'd be excited to see that face you're making right now thinking about it. I'm sure he would be up for it if you asked like that. No. Test me for Sena. Test me for Sena. Eri latched onto Wasu and burst into tears. Oh my, what a gloomy girl. Suddenly Eri was frozen in time. For a very brief moment, but there was a very quickly accelerated technological battle that had just happened that was on a level of speed that was invisible to ordinary people. Obviously Wasu had won. Come now, Mikami, that annoyance is no longer a problem for us. I understand. I can't refuse if it's for Sena. Mikami smiled. Good girl, I will show you heaven for being such a good girl. Heaven? At that moment, Mikami was covered by a black shadow. Wasu finished measuring Mikami after having returned to her research facility. She returned through the very long-distance gate was for VIPs and had confidentiality protection. Well then, I guess I should get the most distant ones out of the way first. Wasu jumped to the Mikagami's bridge. She walked up to Sito, who was quietly sitting on her throne. Wow, she said as she got closer and got in Sito's face and looked at her closely. What's wrong, Wasu? Why are you here so suddenly? Oh, there we go. I'm here to borrow you for a while. Wasu pulled Sito by the hand to the gate. What's wrong? Do you need me for something? I don't need Sito, but I do need you, Mirror. Sito stared at Wasu without changing her expression at all. But she closed her eyes. How did you know? She asked. How long do you think Neja and I were together? Do you think we share the same cells? I am not a clone but a mirror of Sito. If there's something you want from Neja, then you'll have to find Sito. Although a shadow warrior merely imitated one's figure, she was a mirror warrior with memory and ability copying and all. That's a shame should anything happen to Neja. Haha. But besides me, I don't think anyone would ever mind. That's true, but I don't think that Sito's memories are necessary anymore either. I only want my own. Aren't you only supposed to be able to tie your identity to someone else through the power of a first-generation royal tree? I know it doesn't make any sense, but did Sena somehow ruin that link? I don't think anyone expected what has happened because of that child, the mirror said without changing her expression at all. But if you have only memories of you, then when would that have started? Why do you ask? At that time, an expression of embarrassment emerged in the facial expression of the mirror. Her first memory was of Sena. It was important to her, as important as life. She was no longer a mirror because she was determined not to share that memory. You are cute and straightforward. Good girl. Washi was pleased with Mirror Sito's expression. It was as if her old friend was there. I will consent to my scan. If you promise not to use Mr. Slimy number 3. Wow, so you knew about that already. Did Mikami tell you? Wasu frowned a bit with disappointment. The mirror gave a smile in retort. Well, if you don't want to taste heaven like Mikami, I won't stop you. Ahahaha. Should I make Minaho my victim after this? I don't see why you would. She has barely had any contact with Seina. Yeah, I guess you're right. What about Yuzaki and Kanemitsu's daughter? Isn't she Seina's fiancé? Well, yes, but you should wait until she grows up. I'm not going to use Mr. Slimy number 3 on her. Do you have any other subordinates I should check? The mirror displayed a list of her subordinates she recommended be tested. Oh wow, way to sell out your own employees. I'm sure they will enjoy it. Of course. The two laughed like demons. Keek. What a pushover. If that was Neja, she wouldn't have fallen for that. Wasu was skipping down the road happily. After that conversation with the mirror, she had carried out a surprise attack on her with Mr. Slimy number 3, and it was brilliantly successful. I should have taken a video of that. She'll thank me for that someday. Perhaps. Is this the right place? Currently, Wasu was in Kire's cyberspace. She passed through the facility set up for the other researchers and headed to a small house on the hill. There were many researchers there, but no one noticed her since she wore spectacles and a bandana. Wasu suddenly stopped and looked around. This is an interesting fantasy. It was a calm and idyllic countryside which was not all that spectacular, but it was a scene created by Kire. In a way, it was her mental scenery, the place in Kire's mind in which she wished to live a life with Seina. Wasu approached the door of the house and was about to ring the doorbell when she heard a voice from the backyard. Oh dear. So, what do you think is in the letter? It seems to be various data left by Mickey. I'm thinking it might be coordinates. Hello, young lady, Wasu said. Speaking behind Kire's turned back as Kire talked to Hiroshi. I didn't see you there. Sorry. I was distracted. Kire quickly stopped washing the white sheet she was cleaning and ran to Wasu. Wasu took off her glasses and bandana. Well, you sure are pretty. Are you a new researcher? Contrary to Kire, who inquired smilingly, Hiroshi stared at Wasu with immense shock on his face, his mouth hung open. In reality, I came here to greet you before asking to use your personal data. But, if that's what you want, ask Kirie. She already has it. Oh, is that so? You let her have it so freely? She was like a puppy who didn't know how to doubt people. She didn't recognize any danger in giving your data to a philosopher. Wasu was a bit sad there was no resistance. It's you, is it really you? Is this a joke? Hiroshi somehow managed to sputter. Well, I am busy, so I'll see you again soon. Ignoring Hiroshi's question, Wasu walked back towards the town. Oh! By the way, what's your name? He seems to be familiar with it, so please ask him. That being said, Wasu bowed to Kire and left. She turned to Hiroshi. Hey, Hiroshi, are you all right? You look like you've seen a ghost. Ghosts. Exactly, that might be. If my eyes and memory serve me right, if that was really her. That was the legendary philosopher, Wasu Hakubi. Ms. Wasu Hakubi. It was a familiar name to Kire. No, for anyone living in the academy, the name of Wasu was the same as saying the name of Nobunaga Hideyoshi or Tokugawa Ieyasu to someone from Japan. That was definitely Wasu-sama. There have been rumors about her being alive. If she isn't, then we may have just really seen a ghost. They kept staring at the place where Wasu had stood. Tenchi, who had finished his work, was looking in the direction of the Masaki family home, which was lit by the setting sun. It's a beautiful sight, Seina said. It was almost time for Seina, who had spent all day playing in the Masaki village, to go home. He would soon have to return to the normal world. So, he felt a little sad. Senpai, are you going to stay here forever? Haven't you ever considered going out into space? Well, I don't know about the future, but for now I still want to do a lot of things here. What do you want to do? I'd like to grow more crops and make some pottery. We also make tea bowls and dishes, etc. I'm learning bamboo working in Masaki village right now. So, did you make that basket that Sasami brought us sweets in? To Seina's question, Tenchi nodded. So, is your end goal self-sufficiency? Oh, well, kind of. It's a fun idea, don't you think? What about you, Seina? What do you want to do? I'm happy with my current job. Really? Hey, Seina, well, there's no rush to do this anytime soon, but do you think you would ever want to come back here? Huh. I'm not talking about right now, but if you did, things could be like they were a long time ago. Seina and Tenchi and Kai were always together when they were young. But when Tenchi entered junior high, he got other friends, and when he entered high school and moved to Karashiki, they saw each other much less frequently. It may be okay here for you, but for me, the Earth is a painful place to be. But if I had to, I wouldn't mind living in Masaki Village. After all, the Earth is still my home planet. I'm glad you feel that way. Tenchi didn't say anything more. That was enough for him. The wind blowing through the valleys was comfortable, and the two stood and watched the scenery for what seemed like forever. In a place slightly away from Tenchi and Seina, Noik and Kiriko kept silent as they watched the two. Tenchi and Seina were both still young, but on their backs was a heavy burden. The carrots were already loaded, and they were ready to go home, but the people there were content with watching the atmosphere between the two of them, and so they didn't say anything about it. It was Wasu who greeted Tenchi when he came back to the Masaki family home. Hokuto is here with the van. You should help him load up the carrots, Wasu said to Seina. The girls quickly headed for the bath. Seina left Fuku with Sasami and headed off to help Hokuto load up the carrots. Hey, Tenchi. Wasu called to Tenchi, who was left alone with her. She got closer to him. Seina's test results came back. She checked to make sure no one was around, and then crouched to whisper to Tenchi, who was also crouching. So, is it happening to him? I'm afraid so. I see. Tenchi's face was pale blue. He seemed to be trembling. I can talk to him about it for you, she tenderly said with a hand gently on Tenchi's back. No. This is something I have to talk about with him directly. Okay, I understand. Wasu softly moved her hand to Tenchi's face and gently kissed him like a child. Thank you. The trembling of Tenchi's hand ceased and his expression returned to normal.